Hi everyone, welcome back to the Earth on Survival Guide, a podcast for all disciplines, paths, players, game masters, novices, and enthusiasts like myself and Josh. I am, of course, Dan.
I am Josh.
There we are, line developer for Earth Dawn, 4th edition. And on today's podcast, we will be discussing all things mercantile. Because we're going to talk about the book, finally, that came out a while ago, and I finally caught up on Travar, the Merchant City. So we're going to talk all things geographical today.
Yes. We hadn't actually talked about a location in a while, and we just wrapped up our discipline series a couple of weeks ago, and we've had a couple of other things that we've covered in the meantime, but let's go back and let's visit another part of Barsave with the book that was
and let's plug a product for pity's sake. We haven't actually done any product plugging, so yeah, we can do that. We can actually, I mean, we're not here to sell. I don't get paid to sell. I'm just a podcast
I don't get paid
host.
to sell.
Exactly. So, but we're here to actually, spread the word on 4th edition. And by all means, let's talk 4th edition. That's what we're here for. So where do you want to start? Because I think one of the first things I see in the book, and one of my favorite things about the entire thing, is the map. So I don't know if the map was done first or the map was done second, but whatever it was, every time...
Map was done...
Because every time that the text talked about something, I checked the map. Damn, was it accurate.
Oh, yeah. The map was done after... the text. The map was done based on the manuscript, because the manuscript, as I've mentioned in other places, was originally sort of commissioned and written for 3rd edition, but never saw print. And when we realized, and like when I was looking in the very early stages of planning 4th edition and going, okay, well, obviously we've got the core books, like the core rule books. What are we going to do as our early source books? And knowing that Elven Nations, that there was a manuscript of that existed, and Travar, that there was a manuscript of that existed, figured, well, okay, those are books that can be finished up, and I say with air quotes around them, and released in between the core rulebooks, the Players and Game Masters Guides going out, and Questors, which was the first book that I really wanted to work on.
Yeah.
And so there was the manuscript, and there was... as part of the notes and part of the stuff that came along with the manuscript from Alan, an actual sort of sketch layout that he drew of the city. And so the map that was developed by the cartographer that did that work was based on his like really rough sketch layout of the city. And actually, as I seem to recall, the cartographer somewhere, I lost the link a while ago, kind of showed how he did it. He's like, okay, this was the original sketch, and I did this, and then I used that and just built everything on top of the sketch. So that's why it is so accurate to the text in that regard. But that map is gorgeous.
Nice.
It was also expensive.
Yes.
Which is why you do not see maps of that degree and quality in later products. And also, to a certain extent, why... that's basically it. It is very expensive and very time consuming to get a high quality map done like that.
No,
and it was early enough in the process that we were foolish enough to do that. And consequently, people are like, hey, when are you going to do another awesome map like you had in Travar? Well,
I think that a Kickstarter should be launched for just more maps. I think that could work.
Well, we've looked at,
but I think that was one of the,
We have talked about that as stretch goals. Like, for example, there was not a map of Iopos. There was not like a sketch. There wasn't anything along those lines that was done for that book. And a lot of people were like, hey, we would really like a map of the city of Iopos. And we're like, okay, well, then as a stretch goal for Empty Thrones, one of the stretch goals will be, we'll do a map. And those of you who backed it have seen the map because it has been completed and released. It is nowhere near as elaborately pretty as the Travar map, but it is still a very nice map done by our art director, James Austin. At least gives you a general idea of the city.
Yeah, so I thought that the Travar map really needed to be talked about, because that is one of the most impressive things to come out so far of the 4th edition line, and that needed its own little plug there to go. If you haven't seen the Travar map, if you haven't bought the Travar book, pause now, go get it, because that is a fantastic map to work from.
So the Travar book, actually, the first print of the Travar book sold out. We went to a second printing of the Travar book. The second printing of the Travar book does not have the included map, I don't think. However, the map, a digital version of the map is in the PDF copy.
Yes.
And I don't think it's up yet, but I'm planning on making just the map available as an electronic thing that you can download at no charge from the site. But just the cost, because the second print run of Travar is going to be relatively small already as it is, and the added cost of doing that map again as part of that
jacks up the price.
Yeah, just it's not. It wasn't really feasible.
Well, the good news is half of it is available on page 3.
Yeah,
of the book itself,
there is that sort of black and white kind of version. It's not as good as the full map, but it gives you an idea of what you would have been looking at.
But it covers the core of the city, which is mostly what we're going to talk about next. So I'm sorry, I had to just gush about the map. That's all. I'm done.
That's cool. It is a great map. I am incredibly happy. I love that map. It's
map.
just the realities of production when it comes to something like that. You know, a product like that needs a lot of lead time. And we were fortunate enough to have the lead time on the original development of Travar to do that.
Yes.
And with shorter lead times, maps get even more expensive because it does take a particular skill set to do them well.
Agreed. Just wanted to cover exactly why we haven't had a whole lot of maps after that, to that level of quality, whatever the case may be. And now we've had all of it explained because we hadn't brought it up before. But yes, I'm looking forward to getting all the stuff from the Empty Thrones as well, including the Iopos map, because,
Well, the Iopos map is just digital. Guys. There is no physical version of it.
Yeah, I downloaded it. I just haven't studied it yet.
That's fine.
I was preparing for the Travar episode. Anyway, so let's get into the actual content about the geography of Travar. The interesting things I'm just going to bring up real quick, and Josh can talk about all these because he was involved in the development. I'm just going to be the host for a little while. Travar predates the naming of Barsave. It was neutral in the Thrall and Theron conflicts, and I think they brought the very first ever standing army in all of Barsave before the kingdom decided to do it themselves, and that was the Road Wardens.
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
The Road Wardens, if I recall, the Road Wardens was something that was developed as part of the Travar manuscript. It wasn't something that was really discussed in any of the information that was available about Travar prior to the release of that book.
Fair.
Which is fine. And calling them a standing army is a little bit of a stretch, I think. They are an organization that is sort of supported by the city in the furtherance of their mercantile
sovereignty
goals, in terms of trying to keep the area around them, the trade routes especially, kind of keep them safe. Similar in some ways to like the Army of Thrall. But the existence of the Road Wardens, I think, is not a first standing army kind of situation.
Fair. No worries. Either I misread it or it was used improperly in the quotes because I took it straight from the book. Anyway, so let's discuss, really, since it does predate the naming of Barsave, Travar's been around for a long, long time. Let's talk about how they survived the Scourge.
Like a lot of the big cities that did, they built a citadel. They basically surrounded the city with magically reinforced walls and put a dome of magical air and fire over the city to basically sort of make a above ground care, which is what a citadel is. And they managed to survive the Scourge as a result of that.
Yeah, they built a fortified trench with elemental earth. At the bedrock, they had basically what they called the Glimmer Dome came over the top, and that worked as a storm shield as well. Like you said, the magical barrier and horror protection, so they could still see the sky if they wanted to, which is a very different atmosphere for those residents inside that, as you said, citadel, versus anybody who was underground and had to rely on magic to make the ceiling of the care change colors essentially for day and night and so forth and so on. So to imitate what it was like to be outside, but actually Travar stayed, where they were outside. So let's talk about a little bit of Travar's got an interesting set of laws, but I think I can't say the most fun one. The most integral one to them is the Water Rebellion.
Yeah. It was one of the sort of fundamental bits of history in the city in terms of you've got a city that was very strongly allied with Thera in the years before the Scourge, but still very strongly sort of merchant-oriented, and the upper classes of the city looking to make, to basically line their pockets as they tend to do. And basically got to the point where the common folk, couldn't pay it's been a while since I've worked on the book, so why don't you fill in the details? I don't want to feel like I'm getting stuff wrong.
No, it's okay. I took just a few notes on it. Basically, it ended up being that water is so important to everyone's life that nobody was allowed to monetize it. And so therefore it became against the law to sell water.
Right, so, because when the city was a care, or when it was a citadel, the water, the wells,
resources were limited.
Right, they were controlled sort of by the merchant houses. They were controlled by the merchant houses, and they were selling it. And was there a Quester of Garland involved? I feel like there was a Quester of Garland involved at some point.
I believe there was. I didn't take a note on that part, but I believe that there was.
But it was something like somebody was giving away water, and the merchant houses weren't happy with that because it was undercutting their profits. And so they made a move, and the people basically rebelled, and it was decided that no, actually nobody is allowed to, the public wells, you're not allowed to sell water from them. In a city where just about everything has a price on it, water is not sold. And the nice thing about that, this is one of those things, from a world building standpoint, it's you kind of you find these little interesting tidbits or twists or ideas, and you try and build a backstory behind it, a history, why does the culture, Travar is a merchant city. It is a city in many ways, fanatically devoted to Corollas and the pursuit of wealth and profit. It is in some ways, without it being a massive statement, it does kind of address some topics of rampant capitalism and the pursuit of profit and the ups and downs and all of the issues that can kind of go along with that, without being heavy-handedly allegorical about it. But it's still okay, for a city that where everything has a price, water doesn't. Why not? Well, here is they tried and it failed, and there was a popular uprising, and these sort of events in the past kind of happened to develop that story and explain this tradition. And when you're doing world building, when you're creating settings for your game, whether you are creating something new or whatever, looking for those little traditions, those little twists, those little things where you can have some kind of event and the consequences that follow on from that are all really cool things. I remember the Water Rebellion being one of those details that I teased early on in preview posts and whatnot, saying, hey, here's a really cool thing, little bit of a history and how this ties into the present day culture and whatnot of Travar.
I am a fan of, these are the rules, but there's only one exception. Here's the exception to the rule, because I tend to notice, we all should notice those things. It's the exception to the rule. It's the outlier. It's the anomaly. And so, as you said, everything in there is for sale. They're a little bit lax on slavery every once in a while. So literally, just about everything's for sale. And, no one's found a way, even in modern times, to monetize, selling you air, really, other than air bars. But yeah, water's not for sale in Travar. So it's the exception to the rule. So I kind of like that. So also, along with that being kind of an exception to the rule, there are actual animal protection laws in Travar. And that goes along with part of the City Watch with the Hounds of Travar. And I love occasionally some of the descriptions, because I like telling players when they walk into a city what things look like, what things sound like. I like setting this scene like a movie director with an establishing shot of they see certain things. So I think the fact that the City Watch has a couple of different uniforms, and just the color change is pretty much it. So if you are on the City Watch, you wear blue leather pants, black boots, a steel breastplate, long sleeve blue leather jacket, and with a white wool sash and a silver edging. That was nice details I picked from there. But the Wardens wear green, and the Hounds of Travar wear the same thing in red. So you've got blue, red, or green. Just those are the different City Watch guards roaming around, so you know who's who. I like the fact it's color coded. I'm a color guy. It works for me. So, any thoughts on the Hounds of Travar? Any recollections?
No, it's, again, one of those nice little kind of bits of history, of legend, of cultural flotsam from the past that kind of carried forward and influences and shapes the way things that are done in the city, where you had this Beastmaster, basically, who solved a problem of a horror that was causing problems within the city through his animal companions and his care and taking care of the strays, right? There's one of the things that does kind of come up in Travar multiple times is, and again, this talking about like crazy mercantile capitalism kind of situation, how there are so many unfortunates or those who are left behind, the difference in, class differences and whatnot, and how the Hounds of Travar had very humble beginnings, the foundations of this street person who had a relationship with these stray animals, and how that became something that became important and gained value because of their contribution to society, and not necessarily because of how much coin they were able to pull in.
And back to the point of it's the outlier. We talked many times during the Beastmaster episode and since then that they are the wild person, or they're the woodsman type, or the one that doesn't really involve in civilization a whole lot. But the Hounds of Travar is so mired in the civilization that they're now part of the town watch. I just thought that was, again, just a little outlier, the anomaly, the exception to the rule. Beastmasters are X, Y, and Z. This guy's over here at, F.
Right.
So just had to mention that one as well. Another little tidbit about Travar is they claim to produce the best air sailors in Barsave, even though the best airships are made in Jarris.
Yeah, they make a lot of claims in Travar. I mean, Travar, like a lot of the early development and sort of iconic imagery of Travar comes from Terror in the Skies, the second adventure, which is based in Travar and heavily features airships and air sailing. And so that is something that has always kind of been drifting around as a theme and motif of Travar, is how important air sailing is, because it is important in terms of the mercantile efforts of the city, but also Barsave in general, particularly when you're talking about those outside of Thrall. Thrall's merchant endeavors are very strongly tied to their traditional caravan and by going and going everywhere, whereas Travar is largely from a point A to point B, more connection with freight lines for airships from between the major settlements, rather than sending out, okay, well, we're going to go out on a 1 month loop from Thrall and hit village after village and kind of trade at each location and come back hopefully with stuff that will then sell back at Thrall in a more traditional kind of trade situation. And that's not quite so much the case as it is with Travar. And so there is a lot of air sailors and air sailing and whatnot that goes along with the city.
Yeah. As I said, one of my favorite things to do is to describe how something looks when people get in, because this is all theater of the mind. I mean, unless you actually want to bring up a map, because we have a map, but we don't have, photographs of the realm that we're playing in. So I like to describe, and my creative writing teachers always said I was pretty good at descriptions, what things look like when you go in. So when I had my players playing in Par Length, I described the laneways and the architecture and so forth and so on. And I'm going to do the same with Travar, because I thought it was really well described in the book, and that I could finally tell people what it'll look like if you don't get the map, if you don't have the map. So when you walk into Travar, basically you have to pay a toll upon entry, and you have to haggle, please. They otherwise don't respect you if you don't haggle, because this is a mercantile city. And if you're on foot. If you come in through airship, of course, your price is included in the cost of your air travel. So always something good to tell the players that's there. But the streets as you walk in are cobbled with fist-sized white stones. Most of the buildings are ceramic, blue-tiled roof, except the golden-domed massive towers, mostly in the middle of the city. But there are 5 main thoroughfares, and they all double as designated sky lanes. So if you're walking in through the laneways themselves, airships will be going overhead in a straight, front to back pattern. They're not going to cross you. And this is how you enter and leave Travar. Now, Travar is based on the number 5. And I can't say it's ad nauseum, but wow, did they take the number 5 to the level of 55. It is, yeah.
Yeah. Alan,
if you're a numerologist, man, Travar is your place to go.
Yeah. Alan, he also did the Iopos book. And
yes,
people who have read the Iopos book may notice that the number 3 shows up in Iopos a lot. Alan does have a thing with the 2 books that he's worked on, at least, of kind of picking a numerical motif like that and trying to work it in wherever. And I'm not sure what the reasoning behind that is, but Travar did get built upon the notion of the number 5. And so that does show up. It's not unlike, like, in Iopos 3 is very blatantly mystical and associated and like publicly known as a mystical and significant number. Whereas I think the number 5 shows up in Travar a lot more because of one of the like deep secrets of the city. And so it's something that just kind of is bubbling below the surface and will occasionally pop up. And most people aren't aware of its significance.
Yes.
That is to say, most people within the city aren't really aware of its significance, but it does show up a lot.
Oh, it absolutely does. And so there are 5 basic divisions of there's really 6 because they have Old Town in the center of Travar, which is the original founding of it. And it was eventually leveled and made into the
capital district.
Yes. And then there's the 5 outside of that. So it's like this wagon wheel. The center is Old Town, and then the 5 surrounding areas are the Industrial Divide, the Commercial Divide, Riverside, the Great Divide, and the South Valley Divide. So those are all there as well. Mm-hmm. But then there's the outlying places around Travar, and we're going to get to those here in a quick sec or so. I really enjoyed reading about the different areas in there, and I was reading it late at night, and it kind of put me to sleep every once in a while because it was a lot of politics and a lot of relationships and a lot of power mongering between the different factions as to who's in charge of what and the different houses and so forth and so on. And so I think it took inspiration from the river houses of the Serpent River, because as Josh has pointed out a number of times, everything is political. And so whoever's in charge of Travar, everyone's got their fingers in every kind of pot about who wants the money, because that's what, again, Travar is mostly about, is how much money can we get and who's in charge of what.
Right. Yeah. Politics is on some level basically about the collective use and distribution of resources. And so anytime that you get a lot of people together, because they all have needs and desires, and sometimes those are in alignment with each other and sometimes those are competing, there is politics, there is that sort of thing is going to come up as a result of it. And so anytime, especially when you start dealing with a lot of money, the people who have money typically want more of it, or certainly don't want to see their fortunes turned down. And so will look to advance themselves and advantage themselves in any way that they can.
Yeah.
And so that comes about through the, manipulation and sharing and distribution of power between those who have the power to do so.
Fair enough. So it wasn't the Colosseum the word I was looking for was the arena, which is a white marble arena on the outside, and it's got a gold rimmed top like a crown for anybody who goes in there. So why don't we talk about getting into the arena, because pretty much any one of these houses will hire a champion.
Yes. So one of the aspects of political power within Travar revolves around the magistrates. That's the term that's used, right?
Yes.
There are 3 of them. And it is a position that is not elected. It is not a lineage. It's not an inherited position. It's not elected. Yeah. It is basically a position that is won through, for lack of a better term, force of arms. Basically every year the city of Travar holds a big festival called the Founding. The focus of it is their like big holiday
Mardi Gras
of the year. The focus of
bigger than Mardi Gras.
Yeah, the focus of the Founding, and there's a whole lot more detail than we're going to go into here about the Founding.
Absolutely.
But the focus of the Founding is basically revolves around a massive tournament that takes place in the arena where anybody who wishes to run for a seat on the council basically needs to either themselves take part or, as in most cases, hire talented adepts to take part as well. And whoever is left standing at the end wins the open magistrate seat and then holds it. And consequently, being a magistrate, especially if you are a wealthy merchant, allows you to basically manipulate the laws and codes of the city to advantage yourself and disadvantage your rivals. So this is a huge focus, and those in power will spend lots of money to sponsor and train adepts to participate on their behalf.
Yeah.
Even if you don't end up winning a seat, there is a certain amount of acclaim and prestige that goes along with having candidates that make it a long way in the tournament.
Yeah.
The other advantage is, and something that the city has turned to their advantage, is that because the tournament is the focus of so many adepts coming into the city to take part because they can make money doing it, that group of adepts is basically on call to defend and aid the city. It is, in a sense, they're a kind of standing troubleshooter force that they can call on to do tasks, so that there's not really so much of a need of a traditional standing army the way that Thrall might have, or that Thera might have. But it's basically, we've got a whole bunch of freelance troubleshooters that just live in and hang out in the city that we can call on, especially if things come out of the Badlands to cause problems, which we'll get to that, I'm sure.
I was just going to say, right now, in fact, because that's pretty much all the notes I took on how the city works, what the city looks like, and how it got to be what it is and how it is. And unless you had any further thoughts, we should talk about is it the Wastes or the Badlands? I think it's
the Badlands are the ones that are outside of Travar. So
that's right. Okay.
Yeah, the Wastes are the ones that are on the western border of Barsave, right near the city of Jerris. The Badlands are right near Travar. The Badlands, prior to the Scourge, were one of the most fecund, it's the breadbasket of Barsave.
That's a good word. Yeah.
And like a lot of rich farmland and whatnot was there. And for reasons that are not made completely clear, it is no longer. Well, I mean, it's like the popular theory is that because it was home to so many cares, because it was such rich and fertile farmland, the horrors basically jacked it up real good because of that. There may be other things that were going on with that.
That's the theory. That's
the popular theory. The problem, so there's a couple of things that are going on. One is that nobody's exactly sure how to fix it. The Badlands are a blasted hellscape of intense heat and little water and twisted, horror-tainted, corrupted monsters that roam and occasionally make their way out of the wastes to cause problems. But the other thing that's going on is that the Badlands appear to be expanding. Not quickly, but expanding. Yeah. And as time has gone on since the end of the Scourge, they have started to get closer and closer to the city. And so having, as mentioned, a stable of powerful and skilled adepts on hand to help fight off anything that might come about as a result of that encroaching, corrupted area is good for the city.
Helpful. So the Wastes is the post-apocalyptic setting in the already post-apocalyptic setting of Earthdawn.
Yeah.
It's just the even worse version of it. So
right.
Just
well, I mean,
making sure to clarify.
The Wastes are one of the physical scars of. I mean, there are a few of them, but the Wastes are the Badlands are one of the physical scars of the Scourge. Basically a living reminder or unliving reminder of what had happened. You've got the Badlands, you've got Parlainth as another one, kind of like that. You've got the Wastes as well, kind of on the border.
Yeah.
And then that's those are the big ones. You've got the Bloodwood as well, in a way, is one.
In a way.
And then that's in addition to all of the numerous and countless smaller cares and settlements and so forth that were corrupted, damaged, or destroyed as a result of the Scourge and the depredations that occurred over the centuries that the horrors wreaked their havoc.
So I figure if you want to run Terror in the Skies again, read Travar first, just to get everybody there. So you've got this wonderful description, you have this wonderful map to use. But other than that, what did we not talk about Travar? What did I not bring up that you would like to discuss?
Travar does not get along very well with House Catention, the Tiskrang great house that controls the southern reach of the Serpent, because of mercantile disputes, basically, that with their control of the river traffic. And this is part of the reason why air shipping out of Travar is the way that it is that the merchants of Travar don't want to pay fees to House Catention in order to ship their goods. And so there have been historical rivalries and conflicts between them. So there's that. Political. I mean, obviously, Travar being on the shores of a river the way that it is, and air shipping being very expensive, other people are going to need to ship to ship goods or overland or by riverboat. But there is still some conflict as a result of that. There's the whole dock town. I don't remember whether that's the proper term for it, but the tent city and whatnot that's set up outside of Travar proper, because Travar is not right up against the river. It's actually a little bit away from the river, and so there is some space between the city and the river.
It's a small hike. It's a small hike.
Yeah, I mean,
it'll take you a day.
Yeah, I mean, if that, but because there's the toll to get inside the city to pass through the walls, a whole lot of people have set up shop outside of Travar, similar to how Bartertown is set up outside of Thrall, though Travar's equivalent thereof is nowhere near as large or comprehensive. Yeah, as Bartertown is. But it's still a good sized community of its own right that is semi-transient in many of its aspects. People coming in and setting up shop for a little while and then breaking up camp and leaving. So there are some permanent structures, but a lot of tents and other transient buildings like that. But then you've got a whole lot of docks and facilities right on the riverbank to handle the traffic from the river.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's a lot of expeditions and efforts that are, set up and arrangements that are made with various towns and villages and communities kind of in the extended area that is Travar's sphere of influence, including some as far away as the foothills of the Thunder Mountains or the Dragon Mountains to the south. Travar makes a really, really good base of operations. There's plenty that you can do in the city if you're into a more political campaign, but it also can serve a very, very good home base of operations for adventurers to go into expeditions into more wild areas. whether, the foothills, the mining camps in the nearby mountain foothills, or the, some of the plantations and farming communities that kind of are along the rich farmland of the river valley or the southern edges of the Servos jungle.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, you've got the Badlands, which is home to any number of horrors, breached cares, lost secrets, nasty things. Tends to be, because of the difficulty in like just merely surviving, it tends to be a focus of a little bit higher powered level campaign. Like you're probably not going to have novice characters making long expeditions into the Badlands, but there's definitely plenty of opportunity for adventure there. And it's also not that far from Death's Sea, which means that there are fire mining expeditions. And we didn't even talk about the whole fire miner, air fire miner culture and the like magic tattoos or special things that they get that kind of goes along as part of their little bit of culture.
Mm-hmm.
There is lots of,
it is a fantastic location.
Yeah, there is a lot of stuff there.
I was going to say it's a wonderful location because it is, I can't say centrally located, but it's at least center on the bottom of the map of Bar Save. It's closer than most to Thera, so you can always have their influence there a little bit. You've got reason to be in the city to get jobs to go out of the city on caravans, airships, and river travel is close by. So all of your transportation methods are there and easily accessible. You've got reasons to come into the city for the contest. You can get jobs there protecting people, getting hired to train anybody who wants to be champion, who wants to engage in that gladiatorial place. Yeah, there's not a lot you cannot do with Travar. I found it a incredibly well fleshed out guidebook or source book for all of the 4th edition. It was a welcome addition to the other source books in the past.
Yeah, it was a lot of work to get the original manuscript up to sort of 4th edition standards. And it was obviously one of the first source books that we worked on. And it was one of Alan's first books that he had ever worked on. And I think if you take a look at Travar and you compare it to Iopos and the development, like the growth, how much more, as one person put it, Iopos feels a lot more mature as a product, not in the sense of, it's an adult product, but in terms of its just growth, as the line and the development of the line and our material. Confidence and ability to produce high quality material clearly shows in that line from Travar as the very early one through Serpent River and Questors and Mystic Paths and up through Iopos. You can definitely see that positive trend in term, that was of course also during that time. Over the course of time, we got a more comprehensive actual development team put together. Not only myself, but Morgan and Kyle and Carl and Michael and Andy kind of riding herd on all of us and things like that. So it's for an early product, I'm happy with it. I did a lot of sort of editorial and development work in terms of refining it. But a lot of the stuff that was in there was Alan's ideas and Alan's work. And it was just a matter of sanding and polishing and tweaking and getting things to work within the setting framework, both from not only rules, but also like what is actually possible within the setting and hinting at some possible deeper secrets and all sorts of fun stuff in there.
Oh yeah. The list of NPCs is, I can't say daunting, but it's comprehensive. It is a long list of plot ideas to play with, story ideas to play with. And if you can't figure out how to run something out of that, I can't help you, because that is a that is a long list of generated ideas and working parts of the city of Travar. So you want to wrap this one up, or do you want to talk about the next thing?
No, we'll just wrap it up there. Travar is a great addition Travar is great. It's a great addition to the material. It's a good sort of hub location, which I've already kind of mentioned, as a base of operations, as opposed to So like we've got sort of thus far 3 setting books that have been released. Okay. We've got Travar, which kind of stands as the stereotypical hub city base of operations that characters can either have adventures within or more as equally likely pick up jobs there, head out outside, have their adventures, and then come back to, civilization where they can train and purchase goods and all that sort of thing. Right. So you've got that. Then you've got Elven Nations, which really focuses more on areas outside of Barsave. You've got Bloodwood, which kind of does tie into that, but you've got Shosara and Seriatha, which have connections with Barsave only in as much as Bloodwood does, but it's largely kind of focused on the interaction between those 3 and does not provide a whole lot of detail, certainly not on the level of detail that you get in Travar, but it does provide detail for these other areas outside of Barsave. And then the most recent one, Iopos, is a book that is, Iopos is very definitely not, unless you're running an unusual campaign, intended to be, this is a safe base of operations where you're going to have kind of be here and then go outside.
Yeah.
Iopos is the stronghold of the villains. It is, very intentionally like set up as this is not, for most campaigns, a safe place to be. It's not super dangerous, but it's also, there is a certain tone and theme going on there that is very different. And so consequently, like we've got those 3 are all very different. And so in development, we've got a Vasgothia book, which is another sort of outside Barsave. My next big project, which I'm hoping to actually get some serious work started on, coming up here the end of October, starting into November, is the Europa book, which is going to be another book that is focused on a community in Barsave and trying to figure out how to make that distinct and special in its own right. And what can we focus on with that book to make it distinct from Travar or the information available about Jarrus that's in Empty Thrones. So there's things like that are going to be looked at and developed.
Exactly. I found Travar to be 2/3 or 3/4. I'd give it like 3/4 of a boxed set. Because I remember we talked about the par length boxed set in the Skypoint and Vivane box set. I thought that the Travar book that came out and the map that was included was 3/4 of a boxed set.
I actually think there's more.
The treasure cards and yeah, because it was missing just like the treasure cards and some adventure hooks.
Oh yeah. If you're talking about like the tchotchkes and stuff like that, I'm not sure offhand what the like comparative word count is if you were to compare the size of Travar and how much is in that compared to, say, the Thrall source book or the par length or Skypoint box sets.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Travar book is really good and has a lot of useful stuff in it. Probably more than you will be able to use in any single campaign. But that means that you can continue to use it for subsequent campaigns.
It felt like the Seattle source book for Shadowrun. I'll say that. It felt like that.
Okay, cool.
So that's as big a compliment as I can give it at the moment. So yeah, great job. Otherwise, so that'll pretty much wrap up what we're going to talk about now, because really we can't really shoehorn the last 13 or 15 minutes into what we were going to talk about. So
we'll save that for another time. We'll cut ourselves a little bit short this evening.
Travar deserves its own standalone episode.
Yeah.
Got its own standalone book. It deserves its own standalone episode. So until next time, if you have any questions for us or anything we did not talk about Travar and you want to hear us talk about it some more, we can do that. Feel free to email us at edsgpodcast@gmail.com. Did an episode on emails last time. We'll work them in pretty soon if we get any. But otherwise, folks, any final thoughts, Josh, on Travar or?
No, I think we kind of covered all of the high points. And if you have not been exposed to that book, hope we have inspired you to check it out, whether in print or PDF. Both of those are available.
We're going to plug some product. Until next time, folks, it's time for you to go negotiate your way into your own legend, just like you would in Travar.
Good night, everybody.